Hi, Group 3. I am recording a feedback video for your grant proposal presentation early draft. And what I have pulled up here is your selected CFP. And I've also pulled up your planning sheet and your actual early draft, the PowerPoint presentation. So I think you guys are doing a wonderful job so far. You seem to have a real handle on an understanding of the assignment. So I'm just going to kind of try to provide some feedback for revision and to kind of draw your attention to some things that you want to think about adding or potentially changing for the revision. So firstly, I thought your CFP was really interesting. I'd never heard about transition age youth or transitional youth, so I did a little bit of research on my own about it. I had to look up what they were. I was like, who are these people? And so then I understood that transition age youth is really about bringing awareness of mental health, potential mental health conditions in persons of a certain age, right? So this is, I think, from LA. It probably pulled it up because it's in my area. But, you know, they say ages 16 to 25. So, and the other things I read about it generally were in that same age group. And I think they don't say it in here, if I recall, but they say transition age youth, focusing on mental health. So, and this is from UT Austin's Dell Medical School, who is offering this grant funding for a particular project. The project is quite short and there's not a lot of money involved, which kind of surprised me. So the maximum project duration is 1 year, and the fund requests must be between $500 and $25,000. I was like, what? Should be much more than that for this type of project. So I was a little confused about that. I feel like they're being a little bit of a stickler here because this type of stuff is not cheap to do. And what you have to do in your assignment, right, is to show clear, measurable, visible, sustainable results that have a practical operational impact. So that's kind of what we would call like a proposed budget detail and work plan. And that's just kind of like, this is how much money we're asking for. I'd ask for $25,000. And you have no more than a year to do this project. I disagree with this CFP. I think it should be far more than 1 year. And what do they think that is going to get done in a year? I don't know, but that's universities for you. So I did some research on. I was just doing research, and your prospective client is. Oh, here it is, right? Thomas, you were the one who submitted this. So was the researchers at the UT Dell Medical Center who seek new methods for transitional youth mental health treatment and want input from all sectors of industry. So I'm going to recommend something. You do not have to take my recommendation, but it really is to make your life easier, because I did some research on Texas and transitional youth, because this is not something I'd never heard about before, and I realized there's a reason for that. And according to this article, this person said that Texas is one of the only states in the U.S. to have a separate level of care for transition age youth. And I said, well, that's why, because when I was doing research of transition age youth in Texas, there was just a ton of stuff, and I was like, how could I have never heard of this before, yet it's so pervasive in Texas? Well, this is why. Apparently the state has a real interest in this particular thing. So what I did is, this article mentioned the Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health, which is part of the UT system, but they focus specifically on, I didn't look at the Dell Medical School, but this is the School of Social Work, so it might be a little bit more in line with this idea of transition age youth. Then, not that a medical school wouldn't be interested in that, but I'm not sure when we're talking about mental health and transition age youth, sometimes that has to do with literal transition, with foster care, or ensuring that the families are working together to support this transition age youth who has a mental health condition, or helping provide that particular youth with resources, rather than, say, the psychiatric study of mental illness in people between 16 and 25 years old. That's a different, so social work and medical research are different things. So the social work is really about addressing the resources and cultivating a support system for a particular individual, whereas a med school or somebody maybe studying psychiatry or psychology would be focusing on the treatment, or not a support system, not helping this person attain what you guys talk about, like the technical certification. So nothing like that. They're just more interested in, what does mental health look like in 16 and 25 years old, because they talk about how things like schizophrenia, right, tends to appear a little bit later in life, like in your 20s, and, sometimes people have autism, yet they don't get diagnosed with it until maybe they're in this age range of 16 to 25. So a medical researcher, or somebody who is essentially in med school, is not going to be focused on resources. They're going to be focusing on researching the mental illness itself, whereas the social work research is going to be about how can we help support these individuals who have this mental health condition, and giving them the support system they need, or locating a support system for them. So that's why I'm suggesting that this Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health, it might potentially work as a better client for you. So it's still within the UT system. It's just a different research institute. So rather than the Dell Medical School at UT Austin, it would be this TIEMH, I think is what it is. So, and I opened up there, so I went to the Texas Institute for Excellence in Mental Health at the Steve Hicks School of Social Work. Oh, sorry, they're still at UT Austin, so it's still within the same university system. It's just a different school or a different college. In particular, this is a research institute. And I clicked on their projects, and they do have a project, because I'm also thinking about money as well. So if you're talking about researchers in med school, if I was a researcher in med school, I wouldn't even take $25,000. That's not enough for me. I would, especially if I was a professor, or if I was somebody, who was full-time working at, this med school, because the students and and or residents or interns who are working in the hospitals at UT Austin or in the health facilities, they aren't going to have the time to work on this. Plus, it's probably not within their what we call wheelhouse. They're focusing on different things. So really, you're looking at people who are teaching for the med school, these are busy professors or busy researchers who, if you said, well, you take $25,000 for 1 year, they're probably going to say no. You want me to do all of this, and it's really not, it's an extension of my field, but it's not what I do. So your chances of getting somebody for $25,000 just to hire somebody, if you need to hire somebody, they're probably not going to do it. $25,000 to the med school is not going to mean a lot of money. $25,000 to a social work institute is going to be a different story. So I'm also thinking about money, and they have all these programs, and they do have one specific to this transition age youth. So I clicked on this, and then even within that, they've got these different initiatives. I think it's just these 3 different initiatives here. Right, so they have the supported employment for transition age youth, coordinated specialty care, first episode psychosis programming, and then the youth and young adult peer support. So in theory, you could focus on one of those initiatives, right? You could say, because also, again, thinking about money, maybe you just want money for this supported employment it's a different website. I didn't click this far, but maybe you're not only interested, but based on the limited budget that you have, maybe you want to propose a project that is super specific to this one super specific initiative in this research institute for social work, and that you would probably be able to spread the money a little bit further, because as you talk about in your presentation early draft, right, you can use the people who are already working there, although they're going to need compensated. I'm presuming that the people who work at this research institute are already working on these initiatives, so they may not need a whole lot more compensation, but they might need a little bit, because you might be asking them to do more work, or say if we want to build out this initiative a little bit or make it more robust, right, you're going to have to compensate those people who are already working on it. Or maybe you do just want to hire an additional person, or maybe you want to hire somebody who can collect data, or maybe you want to work with somebody, like bring in a partner company, because that was one thing that your grant, I think it was this grant, this is the 3rd one I've looked at today, so I hope I'm not I think I'm conflating grant proposals at this time, or CFPs at this time. I swear it was this one, but maybe it wasn't. It was, there was one that was talking about, nope, this is it. I told you I knew it. It says, ideal projects have multiple organizations working together. So that seems to be a real sell that you need to do in your early or your final submission, is that you need a project that has, so say you went with this School of Social Work, this research institute, and you would want to kind of talk about how this would be, because this is why I thought this was, now I remember, because I look at everything and then I record, but then I forget some things. This initiative already is in partnership with the Department of State Health Services and the Texas System of Care. So they're already in partnership with two other state organizations. So that would be really good to meet that criterion that's in your CFP. So that's why I'm saying that this particular client, and focusing on something like this one initiative, you might get more bang for your buck, because you guys have a real limited funding $500. Like, what are you going to get for $500? Like a charging cord? I don't know, but it's not a lot of money, especially when we're talking about mental health and transition age youth. This is not cheap stuff to do. Okay, so going to your presentation, I think it's looking good. Maybe we just want to make it a little prettier. But other than that, I like your title. It's very specific. I'll tell you now, you guys have the best title of all of the presentations so far because it's very specific. I know what I know what the argument is going to be that you are investigating effects of, right? You're selling the idea of technical certification. So in that case, I've read through your presentation, but I don't remember, so I'm just going to say it now. Another partner you might consider, so there's already those, just thinking about that one initiative about the employment, that also has to do with what you're talking about here with this technical certification. So you might consider some type of partnership between UT Austin and that research institute of social work with some type of locally based in Austin, Texas, either two-year college, trade, or vocational school that offers technical certificates. And so there might be some type of partnership between them because UT Austin is a four-year school, its chances of offering technical certifications to undergraduates is probably going to be a little bit limited. It's not to say that it's not there, but the technical certifications are going to be far more available at two-year schools and trade or vocational schools because that's what they focus on. They focus on certifications, where at four-year institutions or institutions that do like graduate work, like what we call a research institution, they're not as focused on certification. They do have certifications. Like I have two certifications as part of my graduate work. Those don't really do anything for me. They don't give me a trade. It's like I have a certificate in women's and gender studies. It's not going to do much for me. I got it to be a line on my CV, and that was it. So I like your idea of a technical certification because it is really this idea of getting these transitional age youth to learn a specific valuable skill that they can then perhaps in conjunction with that research institute of social work, then they could potentially get help with employment, right? So you would want to think how that partnership would work. And then it would be this partnership between not only that research institute, but those two state agencies, and then also potentially, maybe you partner with multiple two-year schools or trade and vocational schools within the Austin, Texas location, so that depending on what the different schools offer in terms of technical certification and maybe what the student kind of has an interest in or excel at, maybe they all don't offer, maybe the surrounding schools don't offer all the same thing, so then you would want to let the student kind of choose, and it's very similar to how an internship program works, and it's very similar to how a university partners with they have what are called community partners, and the community partners are places where students can intern at, but they can intern there because there is already a partnership set up. So the university has vetted this community partner to say that, okay, this is a safe space for the student to intern at, but it's also, a good place. They'll offer this particular student valuable skill sets and learning opportunities. So the internship model, or sometimes what we call service learning, the service learning model, those are very similar to kind of what I'm proposing here, is that that kind of partnerships where you have these different locations where you could place students, and I'm saying that because, again, I'm aware that this particular CFP really wants there to be a variety of organizations involved, probably because they're not offering a lot of money. So it's like more, we have more people, we can get more done with less money, like that kind of idea. So maybe not more people, but more organizations. Okay, so you have your introduction rationale. So, and I tell everybody this, but you want to form, and you guys are already doing a good job of this, so just keep doing it. But just think about your presentation like an essay. So you want to start off like you're doing here with an introduction, just like you would start an essay, but what you're missing here is your client. So if I'm pretending to be the person with the money and thus the power, right? I'm the UT Austin Dell Medical School. In the introduction, I need to see, here's our client, this is how they fit the criteria of, the CFP that you're proposing, and here's what they can do in the allotted time, with that up to 1 year, and with this money, they'll be able to, with that grant funded opportunity, X client will be able to provide, these deliverables. So you really want to make that point of, talking about what you're talking about, but maybe crunching some of this together to then add information that includes your client. And it's kind of a quid pro quo. It's the whole idea of, here's what I, as your client, can do for you, and here's what you can do for me. So, but really it's more what I can do for you. It's the same thing with applications to universities or cover letters. That's what I'm looking for. I was thinking of personal statement. Yes, personal statements too. But cover letters, the whole rhetorical intentions that you want to get across in personal statements or cover letters is, here's what I can do for you. It's as somebody, I was a supervisor for 7 years and was in charge of hiring. And I've read many hundreds and hundreds of cover letters and resumes, and the cover letters, anytime they would just focus on themselves and never talk about, like, here's what I can do for you, they were in the garbage. So that's the same thing with a grant proposal, is here's how you have all the money, anything you want, here's what, this is how we align with your whole project and your whole shtick. So I think it's good, and you're already getting into integrating sources. Ooh, that got big for some reason. I don't know why. But you're already integrating sources, which is good. Your goal is to integrate sources on every single one of your slides. So any thing that you have listed on your references slides, normally I would call it a references page, but it'll be a references slide or slides, because you might have more than one. Anything that's cited on that, you need to have integrated into your presentation final submission. So I think this is good in terms of the introduction and the rationale, because you're thinking in the right direction. It's just about adding a little bit to it and making sure that you're really specific about that thesis statement, that, the whole purpose of this grant proposal is to say, this client needs money, here's why, and here's what they'll do with it, and here's how what they'll do with it is supporting your goal as the UT Austin Dell Medical School. Okay. So then you go into the main sections. So when you say main sections might not be the best name for this. So, and I'm saying that because when I see main sections, I think table of contents for some reasons, because I think the word sections is in there. So you say, we propose to hold workshops and in-school presentations that are designed to inform about the possibilities of technical and vocational certification programs. A guidance counselor will then help place candidates in local technical school programs. Guidance counselor. Okay. Sorry. I'm like, because we're talking 16 to 24-year-old or 25-year-olds, but what if you're dealing with somebody who's not in high school? So the guidance counselor may not be relevant. You may have that for high school aged transition youth. A guidance counselor will help. In post high school or those without a diploma and who aren't in high school, how are they going to be placed? Or how are you going to help them complete a GED? Or maybe you're not helping people who don't have a GED, so you may need to be more specific about that. In terms of the first bullet point, sorry, I just kind of read it and skipped over it, but you propose to hold workshops and in-school presentations. In-school where? Just in, what age? This is the weird thing about the transition age youth is the age group, 16 to 25. So we're talking people who are potentially in high school, people who have potentially dropped out of high school, people who are potentially in college, people who are potentially been in college and dropped out. So you're talking like a large, it's a weird age range because a lot happens in those years in terms of a person's life. So when you say in school, what are you talking about? Because maybe some of these people are not in school because of mental health reasons. And then also, if I were a transition age youth who had a mental health condition, and I personally do identify as disabled because I have a mental health condition. So, and school was very difficult for me as in high school, and I almost didn't graduate, but because of that reason, because of mental health. But so I can kind of identify with if I think back to when I was 16 to 25, why would I go to this workshop? How would I find out about it? What if I'm not in school? What's the benefit for me? How do you get me in there? Do I have to volunteer myself? Is it this idea of you can't help the person unless they really want to be helped, or is it you need help, get in there, it's required of you to do this? If so, how are you going to require it of me? Am I in the care of the state? I can't be if I'm over the age of 18. So you need to think about how you're going to identify these people and how you're going to get them into these workshops, and then where they're going to be presented, where you're going to hold these workshops, and what are the workshops going to consist of? Is it just going to consist of people talking at me? Because if so, I'm already probably an at-risk youth. I have probably a mental health condition, and I don't know if somebody talking at me is going to be very persuasive. So you need to think about, for that population of people, what is a workshop going to look like, and why is a workshop the best medium to help with this idea of getting students into technical certification programs. And then you have this idea of a mental health professional will follow up with participants in our programs to see if skills guidance being offered is helping with mental health issues. So I'm guessing that would be a person For example, if the client was that Steve Hicks School of Social Work Research Institute, if that's the name, I can remember it. I'm guessing this would be a mental health professional who already works for that School of Social Work, or maybe there's several mental health professionals, or are these mental health professionals from the med school, or are these people working on the UT Austin's health campus? So you need to kind of identify, where are you getting these mental health professionals who are going to do this? Will they do it as part of their current job, or do you need to monetarily compensate them in additional ways? Okay, so introduction follow-on, not quite sure what that means, but it seems like it's introduction continued, but I don't know, because you had introduction rationale, introduction main section, introduction follow-on, introduction beneficiaries, and then everything's introduction. I don't know, you don't want that many introductions. You just want one introduction. If the introduction goes on 2 pages, that's fine. You can just say introduction continued. But or not 2 pages, 2 slides. But anything more than 2 slides, that you're getting too long of an introduction. So this says if the pilot program, okay, well this is the first I've heard about a pilot program. You didn't talk about it on your first slide. Sponsored under this grant is successful in improving transitional youth mental health. The next step is to establish permanent programs to implement these services on an ongoing basis. The good thing about being able to use the thing that I showed you earlier, I'm pushing escape, but I know that doesn't do anything, so I don't know why I'm doing that. If you use this initiative that's already been created by UT Austin, this idea of supported employment for transition age youth, which already has those 2 partners, which you could potentially suggest partnering with 2-year colleges and trade vocational schools in the area that offer technical certifications. The benefit of tacking onto them is that they already have an infrastructure in place, and you would just be kind of wanting to help support that program and also potentially expand it and make it a little bit more robust by having this focus on the technical certifications. And I'm saying that because when we go back to here, you wouldn't necessarily need, you could still do a pilot program with this concept of the technical certifications, but how long is the pilot program? Pilot programs, what we call soft pilots, soft releases, I think, are usually a year long. And if this grant-funded project is only a year long, then maybe your entire grant project is this pilot program. And then, if that's the case, then you want to position this, including in your introduction, that you are positing a pilot program. Sorry, soft rollout. That's the term I'm looking for. I was like, soft release just sounds bad. Soft rollout is what a pilot program. You have a soft rollout, and then you have a hard rollout. So the soft rollout would be at least a year long, and then maybe that's what your project proposal is suggesting. This year long, this funding will help us do this soft rollout pilot program that will allow us to see if partnering with 2-year school, or maybe 1 school as like part of the pilot, maybe you would want to see first if just 1 partnership with a 2-year school or a trade or vocational school would be beneficial in that first year. before doing, if it was successful with that one school, then you would do a hard rollout where then you might add like 5 other schools, right? And that kind of partnership, building those community partners. But then how do you measure the success of the soft rollout? It's only a year. So do you automatically at the beginning identify transitional age youths that are qualified to enroll in the technical certification programs? Or like, are you seeing them through the programs, or is it just about getting them into? Is it just about like building them up and preparing them for these technical certification programs? So I think that needs a little bit of fleshing out. Is, are these workshops meant to prepare transitional age youth for being placed into these technical certification programs, rather than we want to, like, maybe the hard rollout would include what we call longitudinal research. It would include, we want to follow these transitional age youth through their time in the technical certification program to see what happens in order to provide data and metrics and assessment to see if in fact this is working. So you can't, so that might be like a long-term long-term goals, which might be like a last slide, which would be, because you can't do the hard rollout until you do the soft rollout. So the opportunity here is that through this grant funding, you can do this soft rollout pilot program, and then the long-term objectives is, with observable data that demonstrates success, and then you need to define what success means through the soft rollout. The long-term goals, and you might say 5 years, 10 years, something like that, or you don't have to, it might just be forever, is to continue to build community partners with 2-year schools and trade and vocational schools that offer technical certification programs, and follow, these transitional age students through the maybe continuing to provide them ongoing support while they're in these programs, and then maybe even helping them with job placement in the long term. So it's kind of showing, like, you're giving us money now for this pilot program, but here's our long-term goals. Like, we have, this is what the pilot will allow us to do. Sorry, I'm talking on because I have a lot of ideas about this. The beneficiaries, so these are people who benefit. I think that's what you mean by here. I would say, yeah, I don't disagree with the first bullet point. I just don't like it. But yes, I would put them afterwards. Put the transitional youth first. They were meant to be the main beneficiaries of this project. The transitional youth population, I wouldn't say it. Then you give this staying out of trouble, reducing substance abuse, remaining, becoming better, engaged with community. But that belies your objective, which is really about what we call attainment completion, which is about attaining credentials, and more specifically, attaining post-secondary credentials. So the real goal of this is to provide a support system for transitional age youth who, I'm guessing, have been diagnosed with some type of mental health or are in some type of domestic situation. And so providing them a support system and providing them resources so that they do not get quote-unquote lost in the system, and that they still have this opportunity to be supported and be placed into a technical certification program to give them a valuable skill that will then lead to employment, right? So that's the ultimate goal. The staying out of trouble, reducing substance abuse, I might get rid of that, because I think that's kind of a blanket generalization of transitional use. That's not to say that transitional use don't have records, right, of maybe like going to juvenile detention or going to jail, or because of the situations in which they exist, or that they don't do substance abuse. But I think we want to stay away from that. Or if that's a key, or if those are key points, then you need to talk more about them. Like in your rationale, you talk about, there we go. You talk about anxiety and getting marketable skills, but you don't ever talk about like transitional, the main issue with transitional youth is substance abuse, or their main issue is why transitional youth needs more attention is due to they're being thrown in jail all the time, right? Your focus is on mental health. So it's really about, or at least what you're positing, but then you're kind of saying something different, or you're adding to, but not kind of helping your reader understand why you're adding these things, is, oh my goodness, here we go, is this idea of the number 3, remaining and becoming better engaged with your community. But then, like I said, it's really about providing cultivating or fostering a support system and resources, and giving them, while recognizing these mental health conditions, and working with them to prepare them for these technical certification programs, to be successful in those, and then also to be successful in the transition between completing those certifications and then getting a job. So, okay, then you have plan of operations. So, sorry, I don't know what to say about that. I feel like I've kind of addressed, sorry, you have it continued. All right, so you say, in the immediate area around UT Del Medical, those counties have high foster child populations. Okay. What's the age group of those foster child populations? We do need to know that they are within the same age range of transitional youth, or at least between age 16 and 17. Those would really be the only 2 years, because 18 is then bye-bye. Oh geez, I keep doing that. Okay, the program will operate from an area community center and hosts workshops for transitional youth to educate them on the opportunities for obtaining technical certifications as a way forward in life. I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of a community center. What community center? Also, why aren't you taking advantage of UT Austin? I know space is kind of a high commodity in universities, especially like UT Austin, but if you're working, for example, with the Research Institute for the social work, I would request space in there. And that's also a good opportunity to, the only problem I could foresee with that is access to the space. So I disagree with what I just said. I'm thinking about how would these at-risk transitional age youth go to the University of Texas, UT Austin, which is a huge school, park there if they can drive, and then go into the school. So I say the only benefit in that is having them immersed in an academic community, but honestly that's not the most important thing here. So I think this idea of an area community center is good. Or maybe you set up, if for example you decide to go with this idea of going with that initiative I showed you and partnering with a 2-year school, maybe you're set up within a 2-year school where the parking would be easier and probably won't have to pay for parking, and it's just probably a more accessible location than things like these state schools, which are absolutely ridiculous to park at. I got a $73 parking ticket at UCLA the other day, and I was just blown away. So I was like, this is why I don't like parking at big campuses. So this is why I'm happy I normally get to work at home. So anyways, that's just to give you something to think about in terms of like the actual location for where this would happen. I did it again. Next up is to place candidate use into local technical schools. So how does that work? How does that work with tuition? How does that work with the application process? If we're talking about a 16-year-old, will these local technical schools take 16-year-olds, or is it only 18 and up? So that might be like, because I know some high schoolers will take, like they'll do dual enrollment, right? They'll take some college classes as their high school students, but I think they have to maintain a certain GPA to do that. So, or are we talking about a 16-year-old who has dropped out of school, or so I think that just needs to be like that bullet point, that third bullet point needs a little bit more thought to it. And you say we could use the school staff that is in place to help with the project. Be more specific about who the school staff is. This will allow us to have interaction with the subjects on a daily basis. The subjects, it's such a clinical word. I think you mean the transitional age youth, but I could be wrong. We could hire interns from colleges looking for hours, compensate the counselors already there, utilize the teachers and their knowledge, and hire other staff members if needed. Yes to all of that, but it needs broken out. You need to break that out. So you don't want to say, we could hire, if I was the UT Austin's Dell Medical School, I'd say, exactly what are you going to do? We're going to hire interns from colleges. What college? Any college or UT Austin? What are they, undergraduates? Can they be at a 2-year school? How many interns do you need? What does their background needs to be in? Are they studying social work? Are they studying psychology? Like, what are they studying? Are they studying education, like adult education? And this idea of compensating the counselors. What counselors? And how are you compensating them? Using the teachers and their knowledge, how and why, and are these teachers who are already teaching in social work? If so, in what way are you going to use them? Because they're already really busy people. And hire other staff members if needed. Well, in the proposal, you need to tell me, UT Austin, Dell Medical School, are you going to hire other staff members if needed? Because you probably can't afford them. And on that $500 to $25,000, you could hire a dog. I mean, if you need like an emotional support animal, you could hire a dog. That would be fun. But humans, probably not. Okay. Plan of operations continued. Youths who participate will then be assigned to a mental health professional. Again, is that a person who is already working at the school? Do they have time to do this? What do regular visits look like? Is it once a week, once a month, twice a month, to see if their parameters improve over the course of the study? What do you mean by parameters? 6 months is considered minimum timeline to see results. I would just say a year. I would say 1 year soft rollout pilot program. That's what I would call it. Staffing. So I like that you guys just have yourselves here. That's good. You're already working there, so this is good. Keep doing this. do you already work in I just love this, like this. Do you guys already work in this hypothetical world? Do you already work for UT Austin? I think that's the only thing we need to know here, because then you could say, like, already work for the Institute of Social Research, so I don't need any additional, like, I'm looking to do this, like, this is my project, you know, so that's the only thing I would add to this, because I'm guessing you're not asking to hire anybody. So I would just posit that you would already work for either the Dell Medical School or the that Research Institute of Social Work. I would say with the various degrees and stuff, you're better off in the School of Social Work. Personnel justification, this is good. Okay, I've gotten linguists before on previous these grant proposal presentations. There is a difference between a translator or a multilingual individual versus a linguist. So a linguist is somebody who has a degree in linguistics, and linguistics is the study of how we speak. So, like, if you wanted a linguist, which still I always think a linguist is interesting, but I don't know that you need it. Absolutely, if you had a lot of money, I would say, yeah, go for it. But a linguist would be like somebody who would talk to the transitional age youth, make a transcription of those conversations, and then analyze how these individuals are talking about certain things. What are the verbs they're using? You know, what type of words are they using? Are they speaking in long sentences, short sentences? So, and then they would do what's called qualitative analysis, which is where they would analyze the type of language that they're using to talk about something in a specific context, and then come to a conclusion about that, or come to some type of argument about that. Right? Okay, all these people are speaking really aggressively about X. How do we overcome that? Versus a multilingual individual is somebody who can maybe speak Spanish and English or French, and somebody who can speak different languages to accommodate for language barriers. So linguist is always interesting, but unless you're looking to do qualitative research on how people are talking and what type of words they're choosing to use, and why they're talking the way they are about a certain topic, you know, like maybe like one thing a linguist might do in this circumstance is look at the diversification of vocabulary. So what does the vocabulary look like for these individuals, for these transitional youth? And so looking at what is their level of vocabulary, and that's something that linguists do. Okay, the problem or need, client. I think this is not needed here because all of this should be stated earlier in the introduction, so I'm just going to go on. Why our help is needed. Sorry, I'm just thinking, I'm trying to position myself as the almighty powerful with the money. UT Austin Dell Medical School. Why our help is needed. It's a little pretentious, so I might change that slide title. Our client's approach is open-minded that innovation might come from anywhere. I don't know what that means. This is too broad for them to handle internally, so they could have opened the doors to anyone with an innovative idea to step forward. I think my problem with this slide is I don't understand the context of the information. So I I think with, sorry for the silence, there's context needed for it. This is what we call grandiose language, which, for example, is I've worked on a lot of med school applications before with students, and one thing that med school applications hate is grandiose language, and they say don't ever use it, which is basically like, I'm great, here's why you need me, I've done all this amazing stuff. It's like you want to say that stuff, but you want to rhetorically say it in a way that it doesn't sound like you think you're the bee's knees. So you can say these things, but this is not the place to say it in the presentation. This should be going more toward the beginning of the presentation, where you're talking about maybe after the introduction, where you're talking about like where you're making a case for why this client is an appropriate client for this particular CFP. And so just more context is needed for this. And then you kind of go on. So I'm not going to say anything about that. Sorry, I know this is turning into a long feedback video, but you guys got a lot of slides, and I have a lot to say. So, okay, research questions, this should go much earlier. So research questions, again, probably after the introduction. So I think these are good. Can offering guidance into technical certification programs to transitional youth reduce anxiety and improve program retention? I would call that, instead of program retention, I would call it post-secondary attainment percentages. That's kind of the governmental language, as they talk about attainment percentage, and if it which is attainment of certificates or degrees beyond high school. So that's what I would call that, rather than program retention. And saying program retention suggests retention of the program itself rather than those who are in the program. Does giving such youth a goal to work toward that almost certainly requires passing a drug test to get such a job? Oh no, here you're bringing up substance abuse again. Improve their chances of success in adulthood? So again, you're bringing up substance abuse and avoiding run-ins with the law, which is that idea of getting in trouble and finishing school. I would revise this to focus on the mental health and the idea of support systems. It's that idea that, so the real idea here is, with a support system that is grounded in a concept of having empathy for transitional age youth with mental health, with that, do they stand a better chance to gain attainment in post-secondary credentialing, like a certificate or a degree? You know, do they have not only the skills through that support system, with that empathy towards mental health, empathy and understanding, to be successful with these technical certifications, and then also be successful in landing a job and working in the workforce? So that might need some revision there. Planning methods. Good. This is already what I've been talking about. I would just bring it in sooner. Again, I want more information on these workshops. I hear the word workshop and I'm like, ugh. Maybe because I've just been too many in my life. But what are the workshops? Are they hands-on? Are they, like, how often? What are they going to include? Are they in the same place all the time? So how do you get people there? How do you advertise them? Are they required? Like, if somebody's in a program, do they have to go? You know, like, you've got to think about that. Yes, and I've already talked about this. This is the mental health professional. Continue to recruit and follow up over full-term run of projects. Okay. That might just need a little bit more detail. I understand what you're saying there. And then during the last month, compile a report to report if data indicates this program is indeed helpful to at-risk youth. Markers for progress to include giving a life goal, reducing so okay, good. This is what you want. You just need to make it a little bit more specific. So you need information about during the last month of the grant-funded project, we will attain data and provide data and data analysis to determine markers of success or lack of success of this program. The tools we will use include X, right? Are they going to be interviews? Are they going to be surveys? Are they going to be interviews that are face-to-face, or interviews over the phone, or interviews that are just like, here's a bunch of questions, type out your answers, and and then how are you going to analyze that data? And then again, those markers for progress, right? And then how are you going to identify those markers for progress? What do you mean giving a life goal? How will you identify that in whatever data you're collecting? And again, reducing substance abuse. I don't know if you want to keep that. Increasing community participation. What about this idea of completing attainment of a post-secondary credential? I feel like that's missing. Okay. Having the right deliverables. This is an unexplored field of opportunity. I don't think so. I think I would get rid of that. It's definitely has a lot of exploration happening, particularly in Texas. That's what I learned very quickly. The grant program is an open-minded approach to the past. Good, you're talking good about the grant program. That's what you want to do. You want to butter them up. This is a good place for bringing in research. All of your slides are great places for bringing in research. So our deliverables will provide the university researchers. Again, just be more specific about who that is. Our concept is help people help themselves by showing the opportunities and helping at-risk youth with placement into programs. Don't forget, you're not talking specifically about at-risk youth, which is a different population. You're talking about the transitional age youth. I know I've switched the words, the phrases, so I know they're easy phrases to switch around. We aim to steer them to a better path and give them a goal and motivation to improve their own situation. Don't forget the idea of resources and support systems and empathy toward mental health, and it's kind of like destigmatizing the concept of mental health in youth. So not just for the youth, but also for their families. So sometimes families won't recognize it, or maybe the youth are just in a situation where the people don't care. Or maybe they just don't have health care. So there's all sorts of reasons why the mental health could be considered like annoying, rather than something that just needs some attention and care. It's a low risk, high reward scenario. I agree. Avoiding the stigma of drug trials or hospitalization only convince people there was something wrong. Right, and that is I agree with that, and that's identity research. So you're talking about de-emphasizing this concept of something is wrong with you, which is what we call a patient mentality, or possibly to whatever degree a victim mentality. So a patient mentality is this concept that I'm sick, something's wrong with me all the time, and so having that patient mentality is unhealthy. So, and again, that's that idea of the destigmatization. So I agree with that. So I would just say cleaning this up and adding some research and that type of stuff. Okay, planning, timetable. I'm just looking at days left for completion. So I'm guessing this is, so I might just need context. I'm seeing what you have. You might just need context for this table, because I think it's day 0 to day 200, I think. But I don't know for sure. So, and then you're kind of, okay, so here's the first time that I see that you're holding weekly workshops. And then continue pattern for 5 months, which is why I guess it's not till over here. Prepare report, wrap up, and shut down. Okay, so this just might need a little bit more context. And then if you do, which I highly recommend doing a year, you might need to just stretch this out to 365 if these are days. Because that's what I'm getting. You say days since start. So that's what I think, if I'm reading that correctly. Good, recognizing limitations. I think that's good. Yeah, short time and little money. I would say money is the problem as well. Supplies, materials, and equipment. Yeah, these are things that you'll need. Luckily, I don't think you'll need many. So it's mostly this concept of space, which you have, which is good. Population data is good, but usually you can get that for free. And then don't think, since you guys are all positing yourselves as people who would be working, and like I said, you want to make sure you just let the UT Austin Dell Medical School know that, hey, we already work for this college, so we don't need any additional money. We just need money for this center that we want to pay for. And then, who knows, maybe you can fake it out and be like, because we're partnering with this 2-year community college, they're not charging us for the space. You could say that. Like, space is already secured. We don't have to pay anything for it. And then that just frees open other money. So potentially that is something you could say. Like, you have this fake partnership already set up. No new equipment or services required, right? Need only cover travel for yeah. Luckily, I think you're good on like supplies, materials, and equipment. Okay, what we provide to the client. Research results from hands-on studies indicating if offering guidance into technical certification programs has a beneficial effect on, yes. A test of the sort of innovative approach they advocate and request too. But the deliverables also is that these programs are working, right? Yeah, so, but particularly this concept of technical certification programs. So what you want to make sure of is anyone else doing this in Texas? I don't know. I didn't look at everything because there's actually a lot to look at on transitional age youth in Texas, like I said before. But this idea of technical certification, you also want to give some examples of technical certification because that can run the gamut of things. So what do those certification programs look like and what types of jobs could they lead to? So that would also probably be something you need to talk about at some point in your presentation. And then deliverables I would put earlier. I say put everything in the beginning. So everything just goes in the beginning. But what you want to put in the beginning are things like the introduction, the thesis statement, who the client is, deliverables, right? Here's what we're going to deliver. Here's what the project looked like. And then you want to go into those real nitty-gritty details like budget, timeline, context and justification for the budget and timeline, like how the money is going to be spent and justification for the timeline. So that's kind of what you want to go with. And then you don't really need to do too much after that because essentially you should be providing contextual information all before and then giving those strict logistics afterwards. And then the post-grant operation, I like this that you have, but I would include this somewhere in the introduction, like, or at least somewhere in the first few slides, that like what I would recommend doing is saying that, you know, on behalf of X, right, the client, we are, or this grant proposal is, or this grant proposal's objective is for a 1-year soft rollout pilot program that does X, you know, and then provide some other information about what it does, you know, after the grant funded, you know, in light of, you know, if we were awarded this grant-funded opportunity and the pilot program proved to be successful, this would be the post-grant objectives, which would include, right, these particular things. So I would include that a little bit earlier. And then good, you have your references at the end. Okay, I've talked a lot. You guys have a lot of slides. I think there's places where you can definitely combine things together. And like there's places where you may need to make things more robust, but then there's places that feel redundant and you could possibly combine those with other things. So I would, think about how it's organized and then, ask yourself, put yourself through a heuristic, right? Why do I have this here? Does this slide need to be here? How much is this slide like this other slide, and that type of stuff, and then continue to work on integrating your sources throughout. But this is all I'm going to give you with today because I feel like it's already really long. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you guys are having a great week. Bye-bye.